And last but not least, on our ASU jacket setup, we're going to need to add some ribbons, of course. Assuming you have any, you should at least have one or two. But this again is pulled from DAPAM 670-1. It's going to be paragraph 22-6 A2A. There's a lot of interesting things about ribbons, depending on how many you have, how big your lapel is, and things of that nature. So for this, I've just got a couple racks I threw together. We're going to place them and see some of the differences that you may have. For starters, it's going to be centered, of course, and just like your RDI, it's going to be 1/8 inch above the top flap here. Now, we're not going to measure it and push it in just yet. We're just going to visually look and see. So if you just had these 7 ribbons and you line it up, it's best to visually see it with the damage actually touching the top of the flap, and you'll see how it's going to set. Right there, there's no obstruction. That's totally fine. If I had more ribbons, say like these 11 here, you'll notice I'm going to start covering some of these up. Now that really doesn't look all that bad. If you have a smaller frame, larger jacket, larger lapel, your ribbons may be covered just a little bit more depending on, again, how big you are and your measurements of your jacket. Now it's important to make sure it's lined up centered, of course, before you start making any assumptions. Now keep in mind too, once this is pressed down, that lapel is going to lay over just a little bit more. Now visually you can see all these ribbons, it's not that big of a deal. If you had more though, what are you going to do? Cover them up? No, of course not. You're proud of your ribbons, you want to show them. So in this situation here, we have the same amount of ribbons, but they're staggered to the right. So again, I'm just going to line it up center, kind of look at it. So naturally this ribbon rack's all jacked up. It's not in any particular order of precedence. I just grab it threw together for this video. But if I had 11 ribbons, this was the size of jacket that I had, I would want to start staggering it over to the right. Now some of the requirements for the staggering, the Army doesn't care. The Army doesn't care how many ribbons you have, as long as it looks neat and tidy, of course. If you choose to stagger, that's totally up to you. The only stipulation is that your first 2 rows have to be the exact same amount of ribbons. Some people with larger chests may choose to rock 4 ribbons wide, which is pretty much going to max out that whole space there. If the pocket was bigger, it'd look a lot better. In this small of a jacket, it really wouldn't look all that good. But that is an option. That's something you could do. In that situation though, you couldn't roll a whole row of 4 and then jump to 3 and then jump to 2 just so it was staggered and you can see everything. The Army requires you to keep your 2 first rows the exact same, and you can stagger from then on. You can't say you get up to here, go 1 1 1 and then jump to 2. Each row has to have equal to or less than the number of ribbons below it. So just be mindful of that if you start to stagger it. But other than that, we're going to jump in here and place it. Now, of all the things on your uniform, hopefully everything has the equal amount of care put into it as far as centering and squaring it up, making sure it looks really good. But your ribbon rack, your ribbon mount, the placement of your ribbons, what you have, that's something that everybody's going to look at. Most people know your name. They're not going to look too long at that. Nobody really cares about your RDI or your unit crest. It's all about right here. Again, if you've got any skill badges that go on top of that, that's just going to draw the attention there so much more. And likewise, if you're, say, an E7 and you've got 4 ribbons, people are really going to look at that too. They want to know, why are you so ate up? Why do you only have 4 ribbons? So again, just of all the things that you're going to pay attention to and take extra care on in your uniform, your ribbon mount and your placement is the most important thing. If you watch a couple other videos, talk about these getting a little bit lean to the side or pulled a little bit. Once you place these, or before you place them, hopefully, make sure that ribbon rack is as squared away as possible. Everything is neat, perfectly placed. That way, when people are looking at you, you can actually be proud of what you've got and what you're wearing. So again, we'll jump in here, get some measurements, and place them in, and then our uniform's done. All right, for the purpose of this video, I'm going to use the smaller ribbon rack. Let's just start out by laying it face down, because it's going to be the same width this way as it is this way, of course. Lay it face down, start getting your measurements. You're going to want to put just a little bit of pressure on it Get your ruler if I can find it. And start pulling some measurements. And bring it to the right side. Okay, so that looks pretty good. If you choose to use some painter's tape and just line it up right here on the edges, that way it's going to give you that perfect box like before. With this isn't going to hold very good. So if you don't have very good painter's tape, I would advise against that. But you can visually check here. So most of your ribbons are going to build towards the center and then repeat themselves in the reverse order. Like here, like here, like here. So all your ribbons, for the most part, should have a pretty noticeable center. And that should be helpful when you line it up to make sure it's square. Now again, I'm not using painter's tape. So if you're not using it, we'll jump in and do it this way. Again, we're looking at that center point. Just lay it right butted up against the edge of that. When you flip it down, it's going to gain a whole lot more than 8. You're looking at more 3/8 or so. But if you want, here's a neat little trick. Push it down if you can, if your ribbon rack's straight enough. Push it down and center it with your qualification single badge or double badge if you have it. So that lines up pretty square there. Just going to put a little pressure on it and flip it backwards. Now, I'm going to come through, push the pin in on one side only. So now that it's in place, you should be pretty close to that 1/8 inch. In most cases, if you do it just like that, you will be. And pretty spot on. Now that you've got one, give it a little bit of a pull, not a whole lot, just a little. Make sure your jacket's nice and tight. And follow that line perfectly straight. Put some pressure on it, reach through, and grab the other side and push it down. All right, you can double check your measurements. Looking at an 1/8 inch there, 1/8 inch there. All right, so if you have a bigger rack, it'll be a lot more helpful. If it's a smaller rack, it'll still be pretty helpful too. Again, if you have a jacket that's not Marlowe white, even some of your Marlowe whites will have it, not many, but if you've got some curvature to that pocket, this is your chance to get it a little bit straighter. Just grab the top of your rack, because the top isn't pushed in all the way, and just pull it just a little bit. Add some pressure there, push it in, and that should straighten out that ribbon rack, or that pocket, just enough. Again, this is splitting hairs, but if you really want to look sharp, that's a good little trick to do. So there we go. We've got a ribbon rack put in. Doesn't look too bad. Throw your dammits in, and you're good to go.